You're listening to Haze Radio Network, Cannabis Lifestyle Radio. Man, you know what it is? I get up in the morning and I'm like, fuck. We got to come into the office. Got to do a show. But it's always cool when it's somebody that I actually like interested in wanting to meet, right, Beast?
Oh, yeah.
And it's always cool when it's a mover and shaker, right?
Absolutely.
Someone that we think is like doing some cool shit in the industry.
Yep.
And was worth cruising down, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Watched them on Instagram, love the videos.
Love the videos, right? And the word itself, right? Catalyst. You know how I am about manifesting. Mm-hmm. You know how I am about all that shit, right?
Absolutely.
And it was I was drawn, you know. And we got a great guy here, Elliot Lewis, founder of Catalyst. Which before I want to get into Catalyst, I actually want to I always like to kind of take everybody in the rewind and go. And before you did anything with cannabis, smoked cannabis, had it as a business, what'd you do?
Like,
first job.
At what age?
Yeah, first job.
Well, I mean, look, when I was going to school, we did a lot of stuff. You know, we made, probably the statute of limitations are gone these. We made fake IDs. We ran a book. I was a bookmaker. You know, we sold a little weed. And then, you know, at some point in my life, I was like, yo, I should try to go pro in some shit. So I tried bowling and poker. Bowling wasn't going to be a thing. So I played poker for a little while, you know, and then so I did that. And then, you know, I was in cannabis, you know, early on in the late 90s. We got away from it. And then, you know, entered real estate in about 2004. Went busted during the time, basically. Everybody went busted. And then, you know, put a little bit of money together. We started flipping houses again. So that went pretty good from like 08 to 13. And then my buddies from Berkeley, they just kept growing. So they were hitting me up. And, you know, by then it was getting, you know, 215 was pretty strong legal defense. So we got back into it. We started growing. We were having some fun. And then, you know, I just kept meeting more and more people, you know, doing bigger grows. We went from indoor to doing hoop houses up north and stuff. And then in 2016.
So hold on one second. Explain what a hoop house. That was really quick.
Yeah.
But plus we got millennial here, so we got to like break him in on some of the non-Gen X.
Yeah. So it's basically like, you know, they call it light deprivation, right? But it was like really low tech light deprivation. But that way you could get 2 harvests in the season. So you basically trick the plant into thinking it's fall by covering up a hoop house. So we had these hoop houses that were, you know, they're little hoops. They were 20. I know they were like, what were they, 25 by 100, I want to say.
And in essence, when you're outdoor growing, the purpose of doing it is so you could trick the light so you could have an extra crop that year. Is it more than one crop a year if you do it, or can you get 2 in a year, hypothetically?
We would get 2. We pushed for 3 a couple times, but the third one was always duffy as shit. Or if you went early, it didn't work.
Okay.
So say
you mean not thick? Like they weren't thick nugs. They were kind of just really light and fucking fluffy, no weight, but like looked like you had a gigantic bag of weed. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So at our peak, we had 5 properties. There was 4 of us back then. And each one had 10 hoop houses. So you would run them in like a sequence where you'd have 3 that you'd harvest, then another 3.
Okay, sure.
But when you had 5 of them going, you were getting a lot of fucking weed.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then
what about making a bubble hash and things like that from the sugar leaf and things? Were you really into that at all or no?
No, that's above my pay grade. And if I'm being forthcoming, I've never been a good grower. I've been more of the guy that, you know, kind of put the pieces together.
Sure.
You know, we did run some of it back then, but really those products, you know, kind of made a rise a little bit later. You know, we did sell some of the trim off, and then one of the guys had a lab. It was real basic stuff. Now, you know, I even joke like butter batter, shatter. I was fucking diamonds. Like it's starting to get over my head a little bit, right?
But in a way, because we are, you know, Gen X, and went through THC and bud. I mean, I remember Mexican with the fucking seeds. brick weed, shit like that, stuff that like kids, like these young kids, like who live in Cali and grow in this like world, like have no fucking clue what we fucking smoked.
I smoked the fuck out of that brick weed back in the day. So and like that's why it's become so many different grades on the high end, and that weed doesn't even exist today.
Sure.
It used to come with a brick, you pull it apart, it had seeds and everything. So
and it was like 5%. 7% THC and ammonia and everything sprayed on it, right? And then you go through all the stages of when we saw hash oil when it first came out. Only it was like a dark or this or certain things, and then legalization happens, right? And labs happen, and technology, and the evolution of what has happened to what was in the 60s just bud and hash.
Right.
And maybe some hash oil. And what's very upsetting to me is because of the oil revolution, and I do understand like packaging and putting it in pens and this and everything else, what happened to all the early, remember the prop days, how many you'd walk into a dispensary and there'd be 200 types of hashes?
Right.
Now you walk into a fucking every dispensary in California, and where do you even find straight hash except if it was like Axiom? Right. Shout out to our boys, who stuff them with some bomb-ass fucking weed. And, a few guys that are like, trying to bring it back, but isn't it sad that that's not like a big part of the menu anymore? It's rare. And, I lived a year and a half of my life in Spain, and that was, if you got weed, you were super pumped, and they would smoke it with tobacco, which was weird, but hash is all they had because we were near Morocco, and now you gotta buy based on what's selling, right, and give the customers what they want. So it's just a product that is a very, very small percent of what's actually selling. I can't say that I'm sad or happy. I'm primarily a flower guy myself, but it definitely isn't something that is a big mover. Yeah, sure. And because of the generations changing. But isn't it crazy though, from what we started from, and to see how many products there are now? Yeah, it's crazy, and how much cannabis has changed. Like I said, we have like one gatekeeper in her 30s, and then the other 5 purchasers are all 24 and under, right? So wow, and it's kind of part of the way we've built our team off of off of Moneyball, and they really keep track of which bougie and new and are able to differentiate. And then and I've been in a bunch of labs, and I'm always impressed with the tech behind them, but as it gets into these different categories, it is a little esoteric to me, if I'm being honest. For me, it's a passion. Right. Everything of it, the crosses, the genetics. Like, I grew up seeing all those changes, and then shout out to Eddie Lepp, rest in peace, and Jack and Neville, of Neville's Haze, and all these guys that were the rebels who brought those genetics to the United States. No, hell yeah. And kept them through Cali. Some strong shit that even to this day everyone fucking has relabeled 50 times over, but it is what it is. There's still some OG genetics I miss that are around here. Man. I miss that shit. Do you remember the first time you got high? Yes, I do. Yeah. Well, tell me about it. I think I was going from 7th to 8th grade, and the 8th graders going into 9th grade were smoking weed on the beach, right? I think they were smoking out of one of those toilet paper rolls where you put tinfoil and shit on it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I was like with a crew of about maybe 15 of mine, and then they asked us to come over. And I didn't even think about it. I just said yes. Sure. That's always kind of the way I live my life. I'm not sure how high I got the first time. It probably took me like a bong rip to get for real high, but I probably got a little high. And there was 3 of us that just were like, let's go, right? Yeah. And that was the first time. It was like a double-ended toilet paper roll with the tinfoil. You had to put your hand on one side, suck it on the other side. So that was the first time down. That's fucking great. Alamitos Bay. It was probably about and probably 13. The Mexican brick weed back then. I didn't even know what I was. I didn't even know what I was smoking. No shit. But they definitely back then it was interesting too, because there was BC coming from Colombia. There was obviously the weed from Humboldt, but that was all just put into like kind, chronic,
good weed.
Sure.
And then you
didn't have the strains. It was that's some chronic.
Right, that was
That's
it,
what
right?
it is, And then that's the good shit right there.
And then you had the brick weed, so like that was the differentiator. So it's amazing to see now.
Oh, that had seeds or not seeds.
Right.
Like that was the definition.
I bong ripped some cess where probably today I'd be like, they called it cess or brickweed.
Sure.
And it was weird they called it cess because technically that means no seeds. I don't know why they called it cess. Stress, cess, all that, right?
Sure, but stress. I remember that.
Yeah, I bong ripped that shit. Probably now I'd be like, what the fuck were you
thinking you were doing?
Yeah.
But it's great because it revolutionized. It let the weed grow. Genetics, this, knowledge. We're at like a 90% acceptance rate in the United States for cannabis legalization. I think, a lot of things are changing. Shout out to Brittany, whatever her name was that got released from Russia. Mm-hmm. This bitch was about to take 10 years down for a vape cartridge. Literally, for a vape cartridge. It was like in the gulag or wherever the fuck she was. And she was going to get mad roughed, And they let her out and switched an arms dealer that was like killed millions of people.
I'm happy she got out.
But that shows you, because if it was a decade before this, they would be like, leave that bitch in the thing.
For sure.
Nobody would have picked up the story. No one would have given a fuck. But because we're that far along, literally, like that was also a political move. So I believe, the president trying in the efforts to keep, that house and party that he's part of, with votes, because it is coming down the line. There's like too many states. I don't even know how many are left that aren't even medical.
Yeah, it's got to be. Last count was 37 and going up, right? Mississippi and Alabama, I think, just hit it. Montana hit it. So you're really getting down to like the last few, and a lot of those are medical, but still they're.
And each year it's like, so Arizona just made $1.6 billion, and Colorado made $4.5 billion. And it's like, they didn't have that money before cannabis. All those schools, roads, literally, that got extra funding, all those like sports programs or uniforms that you weren't going to get, you were able to get now because that shit happened. And don't realize how much that plant benefited like a lot of people in a lot of different ways, which is great and still is. And hopefully that like reefer madness is completely dissolving.
It's still there. I'm curious to see how my kids grow up with it. I mean, obviously they're even more, because of, they know the family business or whatever. But there's still, I think, even in our generation, like, usually if you go smoke a joint, the moms, they'll pull out the wine, no big deal, but they'll go to the garage and smoke a joint, joint still, right? Yeah. So like, it's accepted. Nobody's tripping. They went to the garage, but why aren't we just smoking the joint, hanging out? So, I'm hoping the next generation that's coming up now.
Oh, yeah.
Because it wasn't legal in our whole lifetime. So I think there's this inclination, even if you're, as pro-weed as you could be, we're talking about smoking 13, that's 32 years ago, to like, hey, should I hide this? Should it be a thing? So even I think as a Gen Xer, you're getting used to it, where I think, this next generation coming up it's not going to be nearly as stigmatized, even by any percent of the population. Right?
Absolutely. And like, what's so dope, obviously the in-person experience and stuff, but I do see in the foreseeable future when it's legal and things like that, catalyst in the metaverse dispensaries that like people could go in and order, and if it was in their state, it actually could be mailed to them if it was legal, and then they could like fucking have it delivered right to the door. Imagine that most likely will be in our future for sure.
Probably.
We'll see. You got to keep in mind, like, you go to Illinois or you go to Florida, these states are so monopolized by a few. It's going to be hard to break down the interstate commerce. Obviously, California wants it because we got the best weed and we grow the most, and we've already been exporting. I think some of these states that are built on protectionism, really these guys aren't even, I just was in Illinois, I'm paying $75 for some boof-ass weed, nice people at the dispensary. They don't want the competition, so, they can't even pass safe banking.
But let's interject something you just said. Who gives a fuck about the state thing? Once it's legal, that state or you or whoever could be exporting it out of the United States to the world that doesn't get the dank shit, genetics, fucking stuff that we get.
No, 100%. Well, look, I think it's already happening. You see kind of Cookies is probably the big international name front running it.
Is Cookies really doing international?
I know they sent some rights in Portugal and well,
it's an interesting concept because it's licensing it. Yeah, it's making it a fucking worldwide brand. Why not?
And the last thing I want to do is publicly knock Cookies. They're a well-run company.
Sure.
I do think they're falling off just objectively a little bit in California. Goddamn, I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm just going to say it how I feel.
That's fine.
No, they're cool. Like
it's uncensored.
It's cool. Yeah.
I'm friends with Burner too.
I was going to say I respect Burner. He's the OG in the game. He's like, before there was an influencer, he's really the godfather.
I'm pissed. I mixed the ego clash.
but at the end of the day, and look, we're primarily a retailer. I see other products overtaking them, and then them as a retailer.
Sure.
We're selling basically the same products. So why are you going to go into when I was carrying Cookies weed, which I don't carry anymore because it wasn't really selling that good. We were selling, I think back then for 75, probably be less now. They're selling it for 90. So why are you going to go into a Cookies retail? But they have that international brand cliche, and I think also, whether it be Florida or these other states where everybody's kind of starting to infiltrate that's from California, they're going to be a powerhouse that it can't be messed with. Interestingly enough, and I don't know their books, I do think they've lost a little bit of the shine in California. No disrespect to the organization.
Oh, I mean, look, it's like, how do I explain it? When Nathan's hot dogs and fries and shit first opened up in New York, like it was the greatest, and for decades, like you went and it was the best fries and the best dogs, no matter what you ever went to, and then it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then there's corporate and bottom line and this, and people making decisions, blah, 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 and this and that. And then those fries get cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
And those lose that authentic, cool-ass taste they had 10 or 20 years ago. And now you're tasting the revised version.
Well, the other thing is
of the conglomerate getting bigger.
25 people grow, or more. Now, if you're international, it's probably 50 people are growing for Cookies. So what's really going in the bag? Right. And, I think our bud tenders, and what's been really successful is like, when the grower comes out and sessions out with the bud tenders, I always say they're the biggest influencers of the game, especially in our footprint. They want to know where it was grown and who grew it. And so, like, keeping that quality control and expanding is an interesting thing because if you're going to expand and you're going to be everywhere in the country, you're not going to get the same growers. So you're going to get these little differentiators,
right? Absolutely. And the genetics.
Right.
Who's to say that the phenotype is exactly what it was? Because by state laws, because it isn't federal, it has to be propagated and made and done within the state. Now, if you do tissue culture, which is a whole different thing, then it's at its 100% potency and things like that. But now you're talking about expensive process and legal deals that you have to have with them and then with the nursery and all these like levels to make sure you have a quality product out and then make sure that that's consistent. So that overall and over time, can be a problem. But shout out to Cultivated, to our boys Sergio and those guys who got some dope ass fucking genetics and nursery buds and stuff like that we always love and enjoy.
Well, the cool part for me is because I'm not a, whatever you want to say, a rival or a threat in that regard, because I'm, again, primarily retailing.
Sure.
I've been in pretty much every big grow that there is.
Sure.
Of every brand, and they all have a different take on how they approach it.
Absolutely.
Whether it be the curing, whether it be how they run the water, the newts, how they automate it.
How quick it fucking does it for the bottom line, not doing strains that if you did longer, have more curative or this or, whatever. There's a lot of factors that go in why they cut a strain over another strain.
Right. So it's funny. I saw a thing we were talking about Beer Bros earlier. They had an article today. It's not going to be corn, right? So like, you can mass produce a McDonald's cheeseburger. It's going to taste the same in Florida as it is in California pretty much, right? I don't know if cannabis is the same kind of thing because there is an art to it. It's so unique to the grower.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then I've been really impressed by the growers that haven't chased the bottom line, and I've seen them successful. Where some guys are like, "Fuck it, I don't want 3 pounds of light. I want 2 pounds of light, but I want quality."
Yeah.
And I'm willing to sacrifice weight and bottom line. And then you always get this conflict of the money guys. I call them, they think they're selling fucking widgets. This isn't widgets, it's weed. So all they're doing is X in, Y out. But it isn't that simple. You got to win the culture and the zeitgeist of the smoker.
That is something that all these industries, advertising this and all these things, don't get it. They don't get it because if you don't understand that this culture, you can't wrap up in some educated ribbon and say this is how we have to advertise because it's all generations. All generations smoke weed of all having different thoughts like us as a Gen X over a millennial over this or that. But what we all recognize is good weed, crystal. Now we know about THC. Now we know about cannabinoids. Now we know about all these scientific things that well,
let me say this.
Millions of people didn't.
The THC testing is not, it's scientific on some level, but it is nice they're breaking down the plant.
Yeah.
I actually always tell people, trust your nose and your senses. It's too bad that the THC testing became a thing because it turned into an arms race of THC, which isn't the only.
But that's because of alcohol. They wanted to regulate it because the true reality is when it does go federally legal, there won't be these distributors in these states anymore. It will go to ABC Liquor and all the liquor companies that warehouse liquor for everyone in the United States, Southern Wine and Spirits and shit like that. There's only maybe a dozen in the whole United States that all the liquor that's in every supermarket and every bar and everything, they first were in a warehouse from one of those distributors. And from that fucking warehouse, it was put out. You understand? And that's why Oregon is run by the OLCC, Oregon Liquor Control Board. You notice that? In Washington, it's the OLCC. Colorado, OLCC. Now, where Cali was different, so we wouldn't let them fucking do that yet. In Nevada, they had a big toss-up, actually, like lawsuits over whether the Liquor Control Board was going to get in Nevada or not. So they kind of blocked it off and stuff, I think, for a mandated period of time. But once it goes legal, the government's just going to go with the people who they trusted for the past forever, making sure they weren't backdooring free liquor or things like that, and making sure the government gets their tax money on every fucking thing will be exactly what will happen with cannabis. Now, all these distributors are going to be lucky because all these very wealthy liquor distributors that run the world way to consume, are going to fucking pay you good, and pay you what you're worth for the most part, or run you out of town. It'll be one or the other.
Well, I always tell people, you think there's money in the game now, and we've always, had a chip on our shoulder, or maybe me is the quintessential we, because we never had the big money, so we've, always scrapped our way politically to either win the license, and then we just build with, organically, we raise a little bit, but we never had that banker money, but I think it's made us stronger. But the money that's out there is money, but the FU money, like the liquor companies in the Bay or whoever comes in, tobacco, they like a billion to them is like a right? Yeah. So and what you could do with that in this game right now is crazy. So, look, as an ideology, I'm a huge proponent of federal legalization. Should have never been made illegal. It's only this 100-year period or so that cannabis has even been frowned upon. You touched on Reefer Madness. There's a whole history behind that. Yeah. But it's really just this 100-year period that we're going to look back on and be like, the fuck were we thinking, right?
Yeah.
But full legalization is going to bring all sorts of other stuff.
Just like if you watch all the old Western movies that where the prohibition was and the people in the streets don't go in, God will kill you. They had, I guess prohibition of alcohol was just, I think, probably even worse. You know what I mean? But
I tell people I'm pretty confident that Jesus used, whether you believe he's the son of God or not, he's from the Islam tradition, and they use cannabis, right? And I'm sure as part of the healing ointment, cannabis was always, part of that, right?
Absolutely.
So, Egyptians,
we all know from historically the reason why it was illegal was bureaucracy and the Hearst family and certain things like that. So, like, when you break down to the reality, it was politics and it was paper over and cotton and things that were of that era was part of the Industrial Revolution that caused a major kink to what the flow of that was going to be.
People forget that, everybody's focused on the THC smokable part of cannabis. Hemp, the Mayflower's hemp, right?
Yeah.
The cover wagon's hemp, the oil on the wheels, hemp, right?
Yeah.
And then I do think, originally it was the Hearst and the paper issue. And then once they kind of figured it out, in the 60s or 70s, Nixon has a report on this, but they wanted to shake down people of color and hippies and keep the war on drug going. And the disinformation, was intentional. We have those Reaper Madness pictures up at our office. They're fucking crazy. It's basically like white women being accosted by an African American man, or like your girl's going to become a sex crazed, and it's like, I don't know where they got this or what study, but it was just a scare. But I actually think that's bad. So then you smoke weed when you're 13 and you're like, oh, they lied to me about everything. Like, it's not that big of a thing, but it is an interesting history. And again, since it's never been illegal, say my daughter who's 14, really in her life, at least as an adult, or that she's going to be able to remember, hopefully it won't be any stigma at all. It would just be, part of, some other thing you're allowed to do when you're an adult.
But it's going to take it will change, it'll keep growing, which is a great thing about the plant. But you can't take away like all the like moms and this that like frown against other moms that, like you said, don't mind having a glass of wine, but God forbid you pull out a joint, you're like a horrible mother, right? Like there's still that going on all the time, Well,
and then they still cover. I laugh like, okay, yeah, maybe somebody took edibles and they didn't know how to take them and they took them accidentally and they freaked out. That's not a story. You know how many drunk people die a year or crash their car or beat their wife, and that's just not covered because it's part of the culture, right? So, and then THC toxicity is a real thing. It's super rare, but again, it's covered when like there's way more conditions of alcohol. So the hyper coverage of the minimal impact that the plant has, is still being done today because the debate isn't fully settled. It feels fully settled, but to this day, because of local control, I go to a meeting and they're going to pass a cannabis ordinance. It's going to pass, right? It's got a majority of support. And then you forget, oh, fuck, these people are still fucking here. It's going to kill the kids. It's a gateway drug. And they'll show up at the meetings. And, like, and now, I've been to 40 local fucking control meetings, maybe more, about, when they're going to legalize it. And then you're, like, by the 40th one, you're like, God damn, these motherfuckers are still here. So those people are out there. I don't know what percent they are, but they're out there.
Yeah. No, there are. And that's the sad thing. And that's what is going to take the full legalization and a good period of time. Within a decade, people won't think twice about it, that it was ever illegal. You know what I mean? But it takes time for things to wither and age away and become acceptable. That's been so doused in not being acceptable.
That's why humans. That's why humans die. I mean, if we're being and look, you could take it beyond cannabis. If humans didn't die, there'd be all sorts of things that didn't change. Most of the things sprout from the younger culture, and then people grab a hold of what we think is good because people are set in their ways. So I call them unevolved baby boomers. Even though a lot of them were hippies and smoked weed, there's still a lot of them alive. But imagine, and I don't say this in a cruel way, but I imagine everybody, is 80 today is dead in 10-ish years, and everybody who's 11 today is 21 in 10 years.
Yeah.
That's a lot different fucking voting in a population.
Way.
Right?
Yeah, wow.
And I think a lot of elections and things like that, they're being stupefied by the uprisal of like kids and that are just mailing in votes and knowing they could do things easily and like use the technology that we have today. And when they really, really fucking have it where it's truly digital and you're like putting your eyeball on a thing or your fingerprint or whatever, and anybody from your phone or whatever can vote, and it'll be like something simple like that, that's going to fuck up politics in every fucking way possible.
Well, to me, the politicians are basically method actors, though. They're not really. Most of the shit they say and why I get frustrated with the progressives is they claim to be progressive on X, Y, and Z, and then they pass policy that is the reverse of progressive, and then they're always controlled by, you know, some special interest, whatever it be, or multiple special interests. So the money's really running the game, and the guy who's in the seat, he's just part of a political machine. You know, we know a lot about the local politics because we're only big enough to fuck around there, but I'm sure at the Fed it's even, you know, sicker, more ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
You know, fuck you money going into the into the system. So like the guys out. I mean, I did a post today about Illinois. You know, we got 2 licenses out there, and the licenses they issued were for social equity. But why did they issue those? To give people a leg up that were affected, you know, on the war on drugs. Who holds the original licenses? The fucking oligarchs, the 9.
Sure.
What are their licenses? 210,000 square feet of canopy. Would they give to the social equity? 5,000. So it's economies of scale. They can't compete. And those licenses aren't medical, so they've cut off a huge segment of the marketplace. And they didn't really make it so they had to compete. But Mr. Woke...
So I have a question.
Yeah.
That's in Chicago, or in Illinois. In California, Bud isn't designated for whether it's recreational or medical, do they?
Well, so they made it hard. So, there's an MMID card, which is really fucking hard to get, right? And then you don't have to pay any tax.
And what is the MMID? Explain that to me.
You got to go through a bunch of steps to get it. It's got to be approved by the state. I think there's like 1,200 in the whole state, right? And then you don't have to pay the tax. It's intentionally made hard. And then in a few cities like Long Beach, and by the way, the state tax is at the most. It's like 40% out the doors. Long Beach, you could pay 6 at the municipal if you're medical and not 8. The big differentiator is how much you could buy, right? So
of course,
you could buy, you know, an ounce of flour if you're a rec, 8 ounces if you're medical. You know, the concentrated and clear.
Yeah, how much oil? Yeah, it's kind of iffy. Like, could I walk out with a QP if I was a card holder or no?
We do it at 32 grams. I've seen some guys at 50 grams. The way it's written is what 8 ounces would break down into, so it's left to some interpretation.
Sure.
32 is a fucking lot, let's be honest, right? 32 1-gram vapes is a lot, right? And, you know, we see those sales when we run big sales sometimes, and we'll see guys cracking 32. And then, you know, we were talking before we got on SB 34. We give away about $600 in those bags, and the vets line up. It's actually one of my favorite things that I do. You know, you get a big cross section of people. I love the old dudes with gray beards for some reason.
Hell yeah.
And then, you know, they got to get medicaled up so they can leave with that $600 bag, or there's a limit. But they've made it intentionally hard to get a card. And then the MMID is the only exemption from the state and the local tax. But, you know, in a population of whatever we have, I don't even in the billions and millions.
What's the main differentiator that makes you applicable to having one of those cards?
You have to go through a process, and honestly, I don't know the specific process, but I think it has to be an approved physician. They get approved by the state. A medical, you know, is back to the 215 days where you're like, bro, I don't sleep good, my back hurts. Fucking write me a script.
Sure.
The doctor hits your knee, you're in and out in 5 minutes. You know, we're talking now. There's guys that do it online. It's basically like, you know, whatever. And my take on this whole medical rec debate is it's fucking stupid anyway. Like, where is the line drawn, right? Like, what's medical, what's rec?
Sure.
So if you have anxiety, you smoke weed. That's medical, right? I like to smoke weed at night to unwind and sleep. That's fucking medical. Of course, the stage 4 cancer guy is medical. And
yeah,
sometimes you smoke weed for fun, but to me, it's all medical, right?
I believe that too.
Yeah, and then, you know, how they define it.
Or if you're going in excess of what is medically recommended and are surpassing that for you as a person, then I would say it's recreational.
Yeah, but that's out. You know opioids. You have pain,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Sleep meds.
Yeah.
Anything that's not Schedule 1, that's Schedule 3. You could say that for. Fucking A, if you eat too many cheeseburgers, you have to eat to live, so that's sustenance. But if you eat 6 of them, that's bad for you too, right?
Sure.
Obviously, smoking weed is not. And look, we know that probably
we have a love for the cheeseburgers. So.
But there's definitely people I know out there that are more. I'm not one of those, but are way more functional. You know, if they you know smoke cannabis and or dab or whatever their thing is, and our rule's real basic. Just come in and handle your shit. And there's plenty of guys. You know, I'm an espresso in the morning and cannabis at night. There's plenty of guys that dab in the morning and come in and they handle their shit, and they probably dab during the day. I think pretty much almost all our bud tender staff, I think we do have a policy, but whatever, Our real policy is like, don't do it near the store and don't come back smelling like a fucking and don't get too fucking high, right? So that's but again,
well, that's a good policy.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about that, for all those that will be listening and checking out this great episode that we have with you, why don't you give everybody the locations of the Catalyst stores that are currently around?
This is going to be a tough one. We have 14. I'll just rattle them quick. 4 in Long Beach, 1 in Bellflower, Santa Ana, Pomona, Hemet, out near Palm Desert, San Bernardino, 1 up in Marinas, or only 1 up in Northern California. Fuck, I'm going to lease them. People are going to be like, you left our store out, no love. Oh, El Monte is a little cracker. We got 2 in South L.A., in fact, I was going to go look at the ones. We're going to open 3 next month. Silver Lake, Mid-City, Oxnard. So we have...
Oxnard's dope. That's kind of cool. That'd be dope up there.
Yeah,
throw one in Thousand Oaks.
Yeah, we're trying. So we're up here.
There's a dope one there, but there's only one. So you'd have no competition except for them.
Well, so they just issued another 200 licenses in L.A., and without getting too deep into it, we're in talks with a lot of people. And the cool part about those licenses, you go anywhere in L.A., and I'm telling people, like, let's take this to the Valley, right?
Yeah, of course.
All the trappers, the Valley's good, and everybody wants to focus on the really, we were looking at a property because at Brentwood, I'm like, fuck all that, man. Go to the Valley, and to me, the demographic that smokes the most weed. This is generalizing, is working class people,
sure,
and that are, and that's really, I think our brand appeals to them anyway. Because instead of spending $600, they spend $450 at a Catalyst store, and that's kind of who we're trying to be. And then our menu's really up to date and has everything you would want to need. Whereas we like the Soccer Mom. By the way, my wife smokes a load of weed, but generally they smoke a little bit less. Maybe they smoke a vape every 2 weeks. We try to appeal to everybody. We want grandma too. We want them all. But the real smokers, tend to be this is a huge generalization. Not. More working class, more, tend to be a little younger, and that seems to be the demographic that, for whatever reason, our message is appealing to.
Of course, and that's great. And I'm glad that you're rocking it. Is there a website for people to check out, or what are the main ways to find out where you are and what's up?
We do have a website. I think it's probably www.catalyst, but not my department. If you Google it, you'll find them. I was telling them on the way in, it's... we basically have, next to nothing as far as the marketing department.
Your Instagram's easy because it's Catalyst, CEO Catalyst or Catalyst CEO?
Catalyst _CEO, yeah. I'll usually drop deals and stuff on there and just kind of keep everybody abreast. So just de facto, I kind of became the face.
You can pin on the Instagram, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what you should do? You should make like a photo and it just lists current stores and have every store and pin it to your top of your Instagram, and then everybody would know which ones are around to go into,
Interesting. My one concern is this, and I have stores on their 4th or 5th iteration of their page.
You think you get banned if you do that?
Well, so I'm definitely shadow banned. I've almost been taken down a few times. I got down for one day, got it back up. But I never say 40% off. I always say,
oh yeah, sure.
I always say fat hookup. I never say, I'll say weed a little bit, but like the customers kind of know I'm talking in code. And then I think even this political stuff is added to
So let's define some code for my listeners. So the fat hookup, the fat hookup, the PHAT fat hookup is 40.
I mean, it depends, but
give me the levels. Where's the 10? What do we call the 10% offer?
That's a good question. I think I'll hey, we're running a big hookup today. I think that's probably one level.
The hookup is 10. Okay, that means we're gonna help you out. We got you, my brother.
If it's ridiculous, biggest one ever, super fat hookup.
Yeah, super fat. Yeah.
I don't think we have an actual scale, but
we should have 4. We're gonna come up with 4 official sayings that are quoted, and everybody would know what that was the deal. But on here, we could just say, 10% off, 15, 20, 40.
Yeah, pretty cool. What we're doing now is at all the locations, I think, except 4, we're running 25% off, which we're already running on super small margins all the way to Christmas.
Sure.
And this
is dope to Christmas.
And we've been running it now for week and a half. So we're taking a beating on the margins, and then I got to balance getting the Christmas bonuses out to everybody, which we just launched out, and make sure everybody's fed. But we know this holiday season is getting a little bit tight for everybody, so we just like to give it back to the people the best we can. And I think a lot of this idea that the margin has to be there it's funny. My CFO, super cool dude, he says he's a convert, right? Because originally when he came in, he kept margin, right? And I'd be like, nah, let's go the other way, right? And so, we did it because it's kind of what we believe in, but there's also something to it, right? Now you're getting the volume purchases, you're doing higher volume, but it's on smaller margin. And then the cool part is the customer leaves happy as shit, and you develop that customer loyalty, especially kind of like we talked about, the real smokers, right?
Yeah. And especially ones that live in the area and it's convenient. Do you have delivery also, like around the area or no? Or how's that work?
We don't do any delivery yet. We did do a little bit, but honestly, it's a whole other business.
Yeah, right. It could be a whole other headache on top of the headache. But something possibly in the future?
No, I think we're definitely going to bolt it on. So, we have 18 undeveloped locations. Which, each one's like $1 million to open. We don't have even close to that kind of money sitting around.
Sure.
So, like, the game's open 3 or 4, get a couple more open. Meanwhile, we're applying in these municipalities because of the local control to get more. So, our first objective is always to get the footprint built out. And then if we could ever conquer that objective, or one day, what's kind of cool is the scoreboard. Everybody looked at us. I've had the same kind of, just because we were right before doesn't mean we're going to be right going forward. But, what I said was happen in 2016 and what I was, yelling at the New York bankers about, we got laughed out of a lot of rooms, right? The cool thing that's happening, we should open 7 more by May, 3 in January. At some point, it's like, you guys are fucking dumb. Look at the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Like, you might think I'm talking shit on Instagram or I'm a little crazy or whatever. So, we are hoping, I don't need the fuck you money to make this thing work, but it'd be nice to get a decent raise of institutional money and just really start hitting this footprint hard,
Yeah, man, and keep manifesting that shit out there, and it shall happen, right? Because you're doing a good thing. You got all these stores. If you weren't working with a model that worked, you wouldn't be adding all these other, locations. I wanted to touch it into, like, politics and this and all these other things, so we'll have to definitely have you come back at another time, or like we talked about, maybe syndicate some stuff, from the Catalyst media section of shit like that. But it was great having you come on. Any shout outs to any friends or family out there?
I'll give a shout out to my girl Canna Anna and the 4 little ones, and appreciate you, man. Shout out for having us on. We appreciate it. We were just driving around, popped in. This was way better than I had in mind. So you got your shit together here. It looks great. Appreciate it all.
And Ty, anything you wanted to say out there?
I'm just high, and I appreciate you coming on. It was dope.
My man.
Thank you, brother. We'll definitely have more updates from Catalyst, let you know what's going on. But it is a dope group of dispensary retails out there. They definitely pick some good products for you to check out, and definitely compete out there and make sure you get the best bang for your buck. So check out Catalyst when you come into Cali, and if you're already here, you are listening to Haze, and you know what that means. If we tell you it's good, let's go on and fucking check it out. All right, see you guys. Peace. You're listening to Haze Radio Network, Cannabis Lifestyle Radio.